A swish and flick. Wingardium Leviosa.
Filius Flitwick, the British half-goblin wizard and one of the most powerful and skilled teachers at Hogwarts. He made 2 different appearances in the series. Flitwick had a long white mustache that went around his head in the first 2 Harry Potter films, but in the rest of the films he had brown hair and a short mustache. But anyway, in today's video I'm going to explain Flitwick's origins and cover his entire life from his birth till the end of the series. Before we get started, I just want to tell you that 98% of my viewers are not subscribed, so if you enjoy my content, please do me a favor and subscribe. It would be very much appreciated. Now let's get to the video. Filius Flitwick was born on 17 October 1935, somewhere in the British Islands, into a wizarding family with the distant descent of a goblin, which accounted for his short stature, prejudged on Foridon from an early age because of his connection to a different breed of being that was both regarded and treated as a second-class citizens by much of the wizarding community. Flitwick, due to his goblin blood, was particularly short and frequently described as Tiny Little Professor Flitwick. By the time young Filius began attending Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, the sorting had wavered between putting him either in Ravenclaw or Gryffindor before it finally chose Ravenclaw, though as the decision took less than 5 minutes. He was already used to being judged by strangers. He was brave in the face of adversity. Despite having been discriminated in his earlier life due to his small stature and goblin origins, Flitwick saw those who discriminated him not as hateful but instead ignorant. He was extremely fair and never discriminated anyone regardless of their origin or whether they were of a different house, and treated all his fellow students the same. At some point, he asked the Grey Lady about the location of Rowena Ravenclaw's diadem, which was rumored to grant the wearer wisdom. However, she denied revealing the information to his, and knowing that she had already revealed it to a teenager Tom Riddle, and later went out to tell Harry Potter in 1988 during the Battle of Hogwarts. It was also mentioned that Flitwick, being a model student with nothing to hide, never entered or used the Room of Hidden Things in the Room of Requirements. It is likely that he achieved the high-graded OWL and NEWT in Charms. After completing his wizardry test in his 7th year, Flitwick graduated from Hogwarts and then proceeded to become a Master Duelist and earned the title the Dueling Champion at some point, and has a shelf full of trophies to prove it. Now back at his old school, Professor Flitwick took up the post of Charms Master. His classroom was located in the Charms Corridor, on the 3rd floor of the Training Grounds Tower. He proved a gifted educator, whom the students came to greatly respect, even if his teaching style was regarded as more laid back than some of other teachers at Hogwarts, such as Minerva McGonagall or Severus Snape. He, unlike them, allowed the students to play games during the lessons, but he wasn't a bad teacher, as Fred Weasley commented that he couldn't see old Flitwick getting marks down, and he usually gets everyone through their exams alright. He didn't hand out many detentions, even for lateness. Flitwick lived through the First Wizarding War that raged during the 1970s, which he was teaching at Hogwarts. During this time, Flitwick taught charms to Lily, the Marauders, and Severus Snape. He also taught many others as well. At the end of the war, his former students Lily and James Potter were murdered while protecting their son. Despite these dark times, or maybe because of them, Flitwick continued to teach at the school. During 1991 school year, Albus Dumbledore trusted him to contribute to the defenses of the Philosopher's Stone chambers. Flitwick, being the Charms Master, enchanted a considerable amount of winged case to fly through the air. At the start of his first lesson of the school year, he took the register and upon seeing Harry Potter's name on his register, squeaked excitedly and fell off of his stack of books. Also, Flitwick was very impressed when Minerva McGonagall told him that she was given a Nibus 2000 to Harry after being chosen to play as a seeker for the Gryffindor Quidditch team. Professor Flitwick didn't allow his first year class to actually perform any magic until Halloween, and after some coaching he gave each of the students a feather, which they were to levitate, using the charm Wingardium Leviosa. The class have been nervous to try this, since Flitwick used the charm on Neville Longbottom's dog, Trevor. However, Hermione Granger performed the spell perfectly, and Professor Flitwick happily announced her success to the class. Professor Flitwick also attended the first Quidditch match of the season, Gryffindor vs Slytherin. He sat high up in the stands, near Severus Snape and Cornelius Quirrell. He looked extremely shocked and worried when Harry lost control of his broom, as well as when Snape's clock caught fire, but applauded happily when Harry regained control and caught the snake. On Christmas Eve, Professor Flitwick was in charge of decoration of Great Hall. Flitwick used a charm to create golden bubbles to adorn the Christmas tree branches. The hall was noted to look absolutely amazing. As the first year exams approached, Professor Flitwick set the first year homework to learn various spells and charms off by heart. Once the exams were over, Hermione Granger visited Flitwick in the staff room, saying that she was worried that she got a question wrong in the test. He, unable to help himself, told her that she had gotten 112%. He also attended the end of term feast, during which Gryffindor won the House Cup, breaking Slytherin's 7-year winning streak. Professor Flitwick continued to teach during the year 1992. During a charms class, Ron Weasley's wand flew out of his hand and hit Flicker directly in between his eyes, leaving a great boil there. Later in the year, Mrs. Norris' Argus Filch cat was found petrified on the first floor. Professor Flitwick was amongst the crowds of students and teachers who saw her there. Near the end of the year, Professor Flitwick, along with the rest of the teachers, were called to the staff room by Professor McGonagall. McGonagall told him that Slytherin's monster had kidnapped a student and taken them to the Chamber of Secrets. McGonagall told him that the ear of Slytherin had left another message right under the first. Her skeleton would lie in the chamber forever. Professor Flitwick burst into tears. It had in fact been Ginny Weasley, one of Flitwick's students, and when Lockhart entered the room, everybody turned against him, while all the teachers told him his comments of knowing what was in the chamber and how to fight it. Flitwick piped in and said that he had told that he was quite sure he knew what was inside it. The next day, Professor Flitwick was to send his Ravenclaws home on the Hogwarts Express. However, Harry Potter had killed the monster, sealed the chamber and saved Ginny, so Hogwarts remained open. Instead, Flitwick attended the end of term feast, where Professor Dumbledore cancelled all examinations as a special school treat and applauded happily for Rubeus Hagrid's return from Azkaban. In 1993 school year, Sirius Black escaped from Azkaban and the Mentors were placed outside Hogwarts for the students' safety, particularly Harry Potter's. Regardless, Professor Flitwick continued his post as Charms Master and the conductor of Hogwarts Choir. During the start of term feast, he sat next to the new Defense Against the Dark Arts Professor Remus Lupin, where the two talked amicably together. Near Christmas, Professor Flitwick went to Treeboomsake with McGonagall, Hagrid and Cornelius Fudge. Together, they discussed James and Lily Potter's murders, as well as the escape of Sirius Black. It was said that the Potters used the Fidelius charm that was most likely cased by Dumbledore himself to protect their home in Godric's Hollow. Flitwick then explained and described the operation of the charm and the position of Sacred Keeper. As long as the Sacred Keeper refused to speak, you know who could search the village where Lily and James were staying for years and never find him, not even if he had his nose pressed against their sitting room window. Soon after, Professor McGonagall confiscated a Firebolt broomstick that Harry Potter received as a Christmas present, and she handed it over to Professor Flitwick and Madame Hodge, the flying instructor. The two examined it to see if there were any malicious or unfriendly spells cast upon it, since they thought it possible that Sirius Black had sent it to him in the hope of killing him. Later in the year, Sirius Black successfully broke into the castle and infiltrated the boys' dormitory in Gryffindor Tower. As a defense mechanism, Professor Flitwick taught the front door to recognize a picture of Black, so as to not grant him access. Near the end of the school year, Black was finally captured and locked inside Professor Flitwick's office on the 7th floor near the base of the West Tower. However, Black vanished that night and escaped from the castle. Professor Flitwick continued his career in 1994 at Hogwarts, where the Triwizard Tournament was being held. When the Beauxbaton Academy of Magic and Durmstrang Institute students arrived, he applauded them at their entrances. At the high table, Hagrid accidentally stabbed his hand with a fork.
You idiot!
He taught the summoning charm to his 4th year students. It was this charm that Harry Potter used during the first disc of the Triwizard Tournament, which earned him first place. During the Yellow Ball, Professor Flitwick conducted the Hogwarts School Choir in playing waltzes, giving students a chance to slow down with their partners. However, once the dances warmed up and the word sister arrived to perform, Flitwick was passed over the heads of all the dancers, yelling at them to let him down. In the 3rd disc, Professor Flitwick, along with McGonagall, Hagrid and Alastor Moody, was appointed one of the guards to patrol around the maze. At the end of the disc, Cedric Diggory was murdered, and Lord Voldemort was returned to power again, and thus the Second Wizarding War began. Flitwick attended the memorial feast to Cedric Diggory at the end of the year. The next year, Dolores Umbridge became the new Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher. She quickly arose to become the High Inquisitor of Hogwarts, gaining the power to inspect the teacher standards of her fellow colleagues. When Umbridge inspected Professor Flitwick's class with the school choir, she seemed impressed and pleased. He treated her like a guest, didn't seem to bother him at all, but pulled out a tape measure and measured Flitwick's height. He didn't seem happy at all and looked rather offended. Later on in that year, Professor Umbridge became the new headmistress after Professor Dumbledore left the school. On her first day in office, Fred and George Weasley released fireworks into Hogwarts Castle, and some of them managed to find themselves in Flitwick's classroom. He, wanting to annoy Umbridge like the rest of the staff, ran for help. Once she had stopped the fireworks, he revealed that he could have done it himself, but he wasn't sure that he had the authority, before slamming the door in her face. After Easter break, Fred and George used one of their inventions, a portable swamp, to change the corridor into a swamp, and then departed from the school to go into the world of business. Professor Flitwick was seen cheering and supporting them at their departure after they ran rings around Umbridge and Argus Filch. In 1996, Hogwarts was put under the protection of a group of auditors. Professor Flitwick was appointed to check off every student entering the school at the entrance door on a register and take their belongings to be searched for any dark artifacts or weapons. With every student now in the grounds, Flitwick cast some sort of magical spells on the gates, preventing anyone from entering. When Harry Potter arrived at the castle gates with Nefedora tongues, he had to wait till Severus Snape could lift the barrier. Later in the year, Flitwick was in the Great Hall with the Hogwarts choir when the Death Eater invaded Hogwarts and Minerva McGonagall ordered him to get Severus Snape. When inside Snape's office, Snape stupefied him and told Hermione and Luna that he had breakdown and they should tend to him till he regained consciousness. Shortly after knocking Flitwick out, Snape killed Professor Dumbledore. Once recovering from his attack by Snape, Flitwick insisted on looking after the Ravenclaws. He also took part in the conversation of whether or not Hogwarts should remain open or be closed, as having the headmaster killed by one of the staff was a terrible stain to Hogwarts history. Professor Flitwick, with the rest of the staff and students, later attended the funeral of Albus Dumbledore at the end of the year, in the grounds near the Hogwarts Lake. In 1997 school year, Severus Snape was made headmaster of Hogwarts, while his fellow Death Eaters, Alecto and Amicus Carroll, became the Magus Studies and Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher respectively. Despite the school now on the hand of Lord Voldemort, or perhaps because of it, Professor Flitwick returned to the castle to teach and protect the students. The Carrolls were put in charge of all discipline and punishments, although Flitwick and the staff never sent students to them if they could avoid it, as the new professor's idea of punishment included the Cruciatus Curse. Months later, Flitwick with Professor Sprout and Slughorn was awakened by Minerva McGonagall's cat Patronus, and still in their night clothes, went to find out what she wanted. They found McGonagall dulling Snape to death. He proceeded to cast a spell which animated the suit of armor that Snape was using to shield himself from McGonagall. Snape then flew out of the window, escaping from them. Flitwick and the other professors set to defend the school and the students. He pointed his wand out of the window and cast several protective spells, including Protego Hornblaze. Then he was asked over the last diadem of Rowena Ravenclaw by Harry Potter, whom he was shocked to see. He told Harry that the diadem was long since lost and that he wouldn't help anyway, not knowing that it was a Horcrux. Professor Flitwick was seen fighting Yaxley close to the front door in the entrance hall, just before Voldemort ordered everyone to stop dueling and offered peace in return for Harry Potter. However, battles soon resumed after Harry was thought to be murdered by Voldemort. In the Great Hall, Antonio Dolohov was seen falling to the ground with a scream at Flitwick's hands, defeated and possibly killed. Flitwick also witnessed the duel between Harry and Voldemort in the Great Hall, and after Voldemort's spell rebounded on him, Flitwick, Sprout and McGonagall all reached to hack Harry at the same time, while everyone else joined in. A celebration feast was later held, but no one sat in their proper places. It is likely that Professor Flitwick sat by the Ravenclaws, since he was their head of house. He was seen talking with Horace Slughorn and Pomona Sprout after the battle. Following the Battle of Hogwarts, Professor Flitwick continued his long position as Charms Master and greatly proceeded to educate the next generations of young witches and wizards on the subject he had devoted his life to teach.
Thank you so much for watching. Please consider subscribing to the channel and see you again in the next video.